This is the L3 Leadership Podcast, episode number 122. What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode number 122 of the L3 Leadership Podcast. My name is Doug Smith, and I'm the founder of L3 Leadership. We're a leadership development company devoted to helping you become the best leader that you can be. In this episode, you have the privilege of hearing an interview that I did with Daniel Bull, who's the founder of 068, who are one of our sponsors, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Daniel in just a minute. But before I do, if you're new to the podcast, this podcast is intended to help you grow your leadership skills, and we're committed to bringing you at least 3 episodes every month. One will always be from our leadership events that we host. One will be an interview from a high-level leader. And then once a month, you'll get a leadership lesson by me as well. If you've been with us for a while, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a rating and review on iTunes. It really does make a difference. And if you subscribe as well, that is awesome. So thank you for that. And I want to thank our sponsor, 068, which is Daniel's company. They're a company that collaborate with ex-convicts to actually start companies with ex-convicts. It's absolutely amazing. And then they have another company called Work Pittsburgh that actually hires ex-convicts who may not have that entrepreneurial bent. And Daniel just does some incredible work, which you're about to hear about. But if you'd like to learn more about 068, you can go to 068.org. And just a little bit about Daniel. Again, Daniel has spoken to at one of our breakfasts before. He has one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard, and how his life has got turned around. And I don't want to ruin any surprises, but you're about to hear the story and just what has happened in his life, the lessons that he learned. And I think that you'll really be inspired and challenged by his story. And his story is actually what resulted in him starting 068 and Work Pittsburgh. And that's kind of the only thing I'll say, because I don't want to ruin anything, but you're really going to enjoy this. And I do want to let you know, after you listen to this, there is an opportunity where you can help 068. They're trying to raise $10,000 through Kiva, which is an online platform for giving, where you actually loan companies money and then they pay you back over time. So if you feel pulled or challenged to give to Daniel's organization, I would really encourage to. L3 gave to them. We really believe in what they're doing. I'll include a link on the show notes where you can give to them, and you can actually make a loan by clicking the link that I include there. So please consider giving. Enjoy this interview with Daniel, and I'll be back at the end with a few announcements. All right, we'll just start with that. Dan, thanks for doing this interview. Why don't we just start off with you telling us where we are, because I would do a horrible job describing this.
We are in a 17,000 square foot industrial factory. This is 068's ninth portfolio company, and this factory is a prefab construction startup. They're prefabbing affordable homes, basically modularizing them and delivering them to sites. Brings efficiency to the marketplace, allows individuals to use that savings to maybe have higher end finishes, but that's really not what it's all about. Construction's an industry that we're getting into. Yes, we think we're being innovative. It's the first prefab facility in Pittsburgh ever. So for an industrial town, it's hard to be innovative industrially. But what we're really doing is a pretty extreme experiment on workforce development. You and I are sitting in my car, which we pulled into the bay. So we're watching this construction right in front of us as they're finishing our first home. And under this roof that we're in, 100 years of served time in prison.
Wow. That's awesome.
There's 12 guys in here, 11 of which are ex-offenders, and there's 100 years of served time. These are people that not you, because you're different, but that a lot of people think have absolutely nothing to offer us. That gentleman right there on the saw, a year ago, finished a 22-year served time sentence. And he couldn't be more of an exceptional employee. He is early every day. His attitude is outrageously positive. And things like that with all of these guys who came from really serious, whether it be poverty or situations, they couldn't be more happy. It's actually shocked me. So it's an innovation in both construction as well as workforce development.
Yeah. So I think that's incredible. When we were talking briefly before, and I said, was this all in your head and your heart always, or just a period of time? You said before your life was totally different. It was all about you. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you developed a passion for what you're doing now.
Yeah. So we say before, and what you're referring to is the time before I was convicted of a crime. And then after I served my sentence, served my punishment, beforehand, I was in a couple industries, but I found my niche in the venture capital industry, where I was working as a consultant for venture capitalists, angel capitalists, basically giving them recommendations on how to curve their risk and manage their independent private portfolios. And so with that came, we always met at country clubs and private facilities that were very much invite only. I became really consumed by this aura of privilege and success and money, and it drove me away from a belief system and structure I had been raised to just a greedy, selfish man. And it's gradual. I didn't see it happening. I felt right in all of my decisions, but when the moment came for me to really know what I was made of, I made a terrible choice. I had grown my company to a very large company, managing a lot of having a lot of responsibility, and I didn't want to say I was failing. I didn't want to let people go when the revenues were tight during the recession, when people weren't placing money or making transactions. And so I changed my life when I pushed a button and I stole money from some of my closest friends and investors that was just sitting there in an escrow account. And I replaced that money. But it was so easy, and it had solved that problem I had. So when the next time that problem came, I did it again. And then you get into that, and one day it's not going to fix itself. And I found myself in a situation where I was having to answer some really tough questions from investigators of why are our books not balancing? Well, that's kind of the high-level details of a mess that just spiraled into divorce, bankruptcy, and incarceration. And I was alone. I burned every bridge. I did all the things that intellectually, as an educated, smart person, don't do.
Yeah.
But I did it anyways as a risk. And I paid a pretty extreme price for it.
So before we go into the next part of the story, I am curious. I wrote down a few things. So as a character issue, would you say that what you did was never on your radar, never thought it would happen, you never thought you would go there, and it just happened? Or did you see you slowly, the first time was easy? And just talk about your character going in and maybe the importance of character in leadership and entrepreneurship and business and life.
I'm a good at justifying things. And so no, if you would have asked me a week before I made that call, I would have said I wasn't capable or would never do it. It was in the moment. It was having the access and ability. It was knowing I had the secrecy and privacy to get away with it. Is when I was put to the test. Fire 2 or 3 people or take that money for 3 days. Oh, now I need to take it again. 5 days. It was pride. When it comes to character, the character broke down when my ambition outgrew, my morals. And your morals need to be on top and keep your ambitions in line as an entrepreneur. I am a never quit guy. People see that as admirable. It can be also really stupid. So sometimes the best thing you can do is pivot. Learn from the mistakes, learn from how you got in that situation, and rebuild. But that's hard because that requires humility. Ambition, humility. Sometimes we don't hear those go together, but they are essential elements of a successful entrepreneur.
So I read an article. So again, this is the first time we've hung out, so I don't know all the context, but you got busted. From what I understood, you flew to Miami, and then you turned yourself in?
Yeah,
is that correct? Or
I evaded for a short period of time. When I knew the gig was up, I was humiliated because everything people thought I knew was a lie, and I couldn't face the judgment of them finding out what a lie I had built. Lie of a company, lie of a faithful husband or a dedicated father. I broke. I thought of myself as a pretty strong person, but I broke. And I didn't fly to Miami, I actually drove. Because I got in a car and I didn't know I was going to Miami. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I was going away forever. What a coward decision. So many decisions, reliving this. It's important for me to talk about because I want to talk to the hearts of those who are struggling in a situation. So I'm being open for them.
Yeah.
I don't think you're there, but that's why I talk about this. There's no romance in it. It's really embarrassing still. My wife and I still sometimes are like, let's not think of talk about that. But that's where I was. So I went there and for a month, really tried to figure out what is my future going to be? What am I going to be for the rest of my life? Am I going to be on the run, create a new identity, create a new life? And though it may sound, I don't know if it's cliche or whatnot, but I had a dream. And I had a dream of my daughter. And in that dream, my daughter was 22 years old. I knew this kind of intellect, in a dream, you just know things. And I knew she was 22 years old and she was hurting. I mean, I just could sense and feel the pain in her heart. And I knew in this dream that I was the source, a major source of that pain, that she was having issues with relationships with, in her life and her own personal value and worth because she had been abandoned and left with a legacy of destruction. I woke up in a cold sweat.
Yeah.
And I walked the streets, South Beach, went to a hotel, picked up a phone, and I called my parents, who at this point hadn't heard from me. No one knew anything. And I told them, I'm safe. I am so sorry. They didn't care. They were just thrilled that I was alive. And I said, I'm coming home and I'm going to do what's right, and no matter what that is. And I did a little bit of research at the hotel of what that might be, and I saw that I could face up to 20 years of prison.
Wow.
But they bought me a plane ticket, and I came home. And I started, probably that was the most honorable decision of my life, because it was for the first time not about me. And it was one about creating a legacy that was different from the one I was about to leave. And that kept me strong through the hard times of investigation, sitting with the FBI, with the postal inspectors, with the bank, with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FINRA. Every organization wanted a little piece.
Wow.
And all I just started doing, because I had nothing left to protect, was tell the truth. And I didn't know what that was setting a stage was actually to give my life back. I didn't know it. But, yeah. Well, man.
That's incredible. So you go to prison. What? I don't even know how long you were there. How long were you there? What?
I was inside for 21 months. So I was literally given the months of what I thought would be years. I was given reductions in my sentence because of cooperation, helping them find the money that was left or where it went. I declared bankruptcy so that they could liquidate all my assets to repay from my assets the restitution. But also the judge gave leniency because of the money that had been taken and not replaced. Never did I pay myself. And they saw that as like basically a backwards thing, that I was trying to be, by being disloyal to my clients, I was trying to be loyal to my employees. So they basically gave me some points for that. There's no honor in it. Having employees was all about my pride. I was more focused on having a big organization than I was having cash in my account. The prestige that gave me the access, the aura. I craved it. I wanted it. So even with all those reductions, when I went into my sentencing day, I was supposed to receive anywhere between, it was in the 40s or 60s, I think it was 43 to 68 months. And so I went in with my attorney thinking, well, if they give me in the 40s, man, I'm just, wow, what a blessing. In the 60s, deserved. But one day I had this idea that I had light, that I will one day be free. And then he gave me my sentence of 21 months, and my knees almost buckled. It was mercy. It was mercy. and very few get it. So I go to prison, and guess what? There's no orientation or welcoming committee at prison, at least the one that you want.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was getting into. Some people have money and they hire consultants to kind of tell them how to, survive the first few weeks, first few months, or so on. I didn't have any money. And so I did the worst thing you could possibly do, and I read everything I could online. So I completely freaked myself out.
Sure.
I went in, and I was given a bag of uniforms. They took everything that worldly that I had, and the most bizarre feeling was the first few hours of where I was in a isolated holding cell, and I realized that door is locked. I am here. I'm been warehoused. No one's in an urgent. No one feels urgency to let me free. If I were to knock on that door, they would punish me. I felt the freedom go. Freedom that you don't realize you have. I felt anxiety that someone might be trying to call me, because of course no cell phone now. So literally there's kind of a weaning of having access to information, to knowing what's going on. You get none of that. And I felt the anxiety starting to build. I'm not a claustrophobic person. I'm not afraid of heights. I don't have any of those things. But I actually started having to mentally suppress the panic. And the panic was also coming from, at some point, they're going to take me out of here and they're going to put me into a circulation. At some point, I'm going to see this inmate population that I've only read bad things about. What is that going to be like? And you would think at this point, I'm in the foxhole and I'm turning to the Lord or my faith-based system. And no, I didn't feel worthy to do that. I didn't feel like I could do that. I didn't think that was an option for me. I didn't deserve it. So I was alone. I felt it, and I was just trying to intellectually suppress that panic. I enter prison. They tell me to go to Hotel Bravo HB unit. They say, ask somebody, they'll show me my bunk. Show me my cell. I didn't know what the heck HB unit was. What's a unit? Where's the yard? Put me out the door, and I started walking. I figured if I didn't go to a door that was locked, I was probably going in the right direction. And so I basically walked right out into the yard where all the inmates are exercising, and what you see on, HBO and all that other stuff. And, I see hardened criminals everywhere. At least they all look that way to me. They just look intense. And I'm trying my best to not look too hard, to not challenge people with my presence like I'm some big shot, and I'm trying also not to look weak. I'm thinking this is important. What the funny thing is after spending time and watching others go through that same walk, I realized that most people are more nervous of the new guy than the new guy is of them. Because that new guy, they all know what they're going through. Same thing was going through my mind. A little bit of panic, a little bit of anxiety, don't want to become a victim, ready to go any, snap of a finger, ready to fight, ready to protect oneself. Well, that gets everybody in trouble. That causes headaches and problems for everybody. So they pretty much just leave you alone until they see you settled for a second. So I do go into a unit, and I basically, big letters, I could tell, okay, HB, I find it. I walk in, and when I walk in there and realize I'm walking to where I will be till I'm released, I just hear this buzz. And the buzz is of all the activity of how many bodies are in this prison. I mean, there's prisons hold lots of people. There's 2.1 million people right now behind bars. 2.1 million people. And so that activity, that chatter, I knew a lot of it was directed towards me, because I could just tell there was an increase at the new guy. You're very new. Everyone knows who you are. And I remember having this conversation with God. If you let me go right now, I will never see a place like this again. Never. And the doors didn't open up. But it started a journey. It wiped away a lot of the bigotry and preconceived notions I had of those who are incarcerated. It taught me the value of humanity in the worst of places. It also taught me about humanity in the worst of places. And people came to me, they helped me, had no intention of robbing me or manipulating or taking advantage. And that is, a selective group. And I was lucky enough to be from Pittsburgh. And everyone knew I was from Pittsburgh. I couldn't figure out how. They said, "Oh, you're from Pittsburgh. How do you know I'm from Pittsburgh?" Everybody knew where I was from. I couldn't figure it out until I had kind of the bravery to start talking to people and say, "Hey, how do you know where I'm from? Did you read about me?" Or, it's like, no. Look at your number. And I looked at my number, and you see, I'm no longer a name in a prison. I'm a number. And my number was 330-61068. 068 meant Pittsburgh. I noticed that everyone who came up to me to help me also had a 068 on their jackets. And it told everyone, homeboy. They were eager to hear from me the news of home, some being down 20 or more years. What's it like? What's it like out there? I'm fresh from the street, they could tell. And so they wanted to know, do I know this person? Do I know that person? Oh, that street's gone now? They have a building over there? Oh, they tore that down? They just couldn't wait to hear about home. And so 068, though it was a terrible thing to have, a number, a prison number, became a source of friendship and trust and partnership, which carried through till I left.
And so you developed this passion. I heard you talk a few weeks ago, and you said the one thing that really surprised you about the men in prison was they had all the potential in the world. You made the statement I loved. You said, if you weren't you, you'd be killing it and be able to do unbelievable things in the world. But because you're you, and you grew up in the circumstances you had and all of those things, you're here and can't capitalize on that. Can you talk about a little bit about how that experience shaped you and really gave you a passion to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was a bigot. Man, did I just assume things about people because of who they were and where they were from or what their education was. I thought your education makes you creative. No. DNA and some special it makes you creative. Education can just sometimes organize that creativity. And what I recognized was there was this innovation there that will absolutely astound you. I came from the venture capital community. I thought I was with the smartest and brightest minds of the area. I went to all the conferences around the country. I spoke. I thought I was pretty snazzy, pretty smart. I thought I was dealing with all the real smart ones, the guys who had it. And then I go to prison and I find those who had nothing. They had no chance. Not a first chance is what I mean. People think people get out of prison, they need a second chance. No, I'm telling you right now, many, many, many never had a first. Don't even think of it as a second. And their ideas were inspiring. I just read an article this week of an education program that is happening inside prisons, and the debate team beat Harvard's debate team in a one-on-one.
That's fantastic.
And people are like making this big deal, like, oh my goodness, can you believe it? There's like some people in there and they found them and they're super smart. No, I'm telling you, they're in there, and they're in there in the thousands, the tens of thousands. And there's others who maybe they aren't innovative. Man, they are actually so eager to work and create a living. They made a mistake. Now, to get out of the spiral of that mistake, the stigma of being a felon, that's the impossible hero's journey. Few make it. That's why they call it. That's why I call it a hero's journey. And I tell all these guys in any of the businesses under our incubator, this is one in which very few achieve, which is real freedom after prison. I think at the same talk in which you and I met, I made the statement which rings true to me, is in America you are never truly free until you earn a paycheck. And so I started investigating and realizing the situation I was in, what I was going to be up against, and it was bleak. I read the statistics. I read what was happening. I also came from the aspect knowing that if I hadn't made the mistakes I had made and a felon walked into my door of my business, no matter how smart he was or energetic or loyal, I'd say, see you later, because that is a risk I was never willing to take. That was hard for me to deal with. I had to be honest with myself. That's my answer would be no, see ya. And now I'm talking about me. And I had a lot of expectations on myself and a lot of confidence. So recognizing that even under all of that, lost abilities and opportunities, I had it better than most, that I was going to have an easier time being released, that bugged me. That because of my white-collar crime, though had many victims, and my intelligence and ability to hire a law firm to represent me, I get a reduced sentence when there are others in there who had victimless crimes, as they call them, and had mandatory sentences of 10 or more years. I mean, I had to, I was grappling with all of this. And so all of these things and all of this information I'm sharing and just dumping on you now led me down the path of my life's work needs to be creating the fair and honest opportunity for those re-entering society. And I could only do it in the area in which I knew well, and that was entrepreneurship. And so I started, when I was released, officially started an incubator that you're here now talking to me about called 068. And we use that number, that Pittsburgh designated federal ID number, because we will not hide who we are or what we're about. Honesty is the most important rule here. Don't be delusional, be honest. Be forthcoming. As soon as possible, tell people about that worst thing you've ever done. It's awkward, but you will at least know, and you will eliminate that fear of being found out, being considered a fraud because you omitted a very important fact that people believe they have the right to know. I'm here sitting across you, and I don't believe I have the right to know the worst thing you ever did, and I know you'd probably never tell me because you'd be so afraid of what I might think of you, how that would warp my opinion that I've developed over our 2-3 meetings, But as a felon, I don't have the luxury of not sharing that with you, because society is very clear that that's something that's very important to get out there. Why would you not tell me that? And so we just embrace it and move on. And it's worked pretty well for us so far. In fact, I think it's actually opened more doors, because that type of intimacy and honesty up front is honorable. It's honorable. People see it.
I love that. Could you talk about just a little bit, now you're on the other side of it, just the whole redemption? So even your marriage got redeemed. I just think it's unbelievable how you're using your life now from selfishness to unselfishness. Just what's it like now that you're on the other side doing all of this? How do you view redemption? How do you view grace? How do you view mercy? Broad question, but...
Well, yeah, I guess I've shared with the audience the worst things I've ever done, so I would like to take a quick moment and share the greatest thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And the greatest thing I ever did was pursue forgiveness with my ex-wife. I was fully divorced. She left me with both biblical grounds as well as just the destruction I had left. No one judged her for it, and I pursued her forgiveness. I had no expectations of what that would mean. When I left prison, I believed I would find a place again. I would find a place somewhere and add value into a business and a life. What was impossible, I had no belief whatsoever was achievable, was the redemption, the restoration of the relationships I had burned, the people I had stolen from, and as above all, my ex-wife. Never. Treated her so poorly. So poorly. I was disloyal. I was everything that basically a woman would fear their husband would turn into. But prison and having a born-again situation. I don't know. Is this a Christian podcast? Because I would like to share.
Oh, yeah, share your faith, yeah.
Because that's important to me, and I don't want to offend you.
Yeah,
But,
not at all.
I found the Lord when I was in prison, a very actually hard place to find. I dodged it for a while because I was so humiliated. But when I pursued that forgiveness with the Lord, I knew immediately what I had to do. I just knew it. That's the Holy Spirit talking. And I knew if I'm going to be given this type of forgiveness, I have to allow others to achieve that type of forgiveness. That hate and bitterness could destroy them. I could be a stumbling block. I couldn't let that happen. And so that's what motivated me to pursue my ex-wife in forgiveness. We met at a church. We were super nervous. And what's crazy, which we kind of like to share, is when we first ran into each other again after 2 years of no communication or sight, we didn't recognize each other. And it wasn't because of physically we were different. It's because spiritually we were both different. She had found the truth on her own, in her despair, in her darkness, in her loneliness, just as I did. We didn't know. I didn't know she was pursuing me to honor the Lord and restore family. She didn't know that's what I was doing. And it was hard, and we were very slow and intentional on it. People were terrified, like, wait, what?
Yeah.
No, this wasn't in the picture. You're a good person for going to see him again, but hold up, you're dating? You're seeking restoration? What? And we were open about it from the beginning, and Nicole was the most open, and I just, the best thing I've ever done. And we were remarried September 28th of last year, so we just celebrated our 1 year.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we got these 3 beautiful children, 2 from the first marriage, and now this one from my second marriage. I always sometimes joke with her that you're so much better than my first wife. But
what a great story.
And I'll share this last thing of when you talk about, really uniting and bringing it all back into the fold. Just Nicole and I both would pray that we would never forget what we had been through so that we could always hold dear what has been given back to us. And he answered that prayer with our son, who was born on July 8th, which was the exact anniversary day of the day I walked out of prison. So every birthday for the rest of my life is going to be that remembering of that freedom and that promise. Way more beautiful than I could have thought. And so we're living the dream on that end. So, pursuing 068 and restoring others, having my destination being the helping of people, it's been a lot easier to not have to question the journey.
Yeah.
It was difficult at first. It started with a lot of awkward conversations, me telling people what my intentions were, and a lot of people saying, hey, no thanks. But what's interesting is that I assumed the church would rally to me first. In fact, no, it wasn't the church. It was just people of all faiths and creeds, atheists. But what rang true was in all of those worldviews was the restoration of those who are lesser than, who have little, who are literally on the road to being victims again. That rings true no matter what your position is from. And so, 068 is not a Christian program. It's not an Islamic program. It's not an atheistic program. It's actually a lot of different people coming together to restore others.
I love it. And so if someone's listening to this, I'll include links to everything in the show notes, but someone's listening to this and they're like, wow, I would love to be a part of that. What are ways people can get involved, or can they, to support what you're doing?
Well, those links, a great way to, kind of start the process would be to join a newsletter so you can see what's happening, where we present volunteer opportunities. We present a volunteer opportunity, you raise your hand and say, I would love to be a part of that. And you'd be connected to one of our coordinators and you go from there. We just kind of ramped up. I mean, it's an exponential growing type of thing. This time last year we had 3 and, now we have 9 companies. And this time last year we had, 4 entrepreneurs, and now we have 14 and, 50 employees. And it's growing, and so what it requires is just more support and more help. What's important to note is that all of our businesses thus far are for profit, including 068 itself. Why? Lucrative benefit packages that we can provide, flexibility to pivot for all of our portfolio companies, the fact that we can retain earnings for times that might be light. We're not dependent upon federal grants or endowments or so on to survive another year. So we become sustainable from individuals that are seen as unstable.
Yeah.
And that's been an important model, because if we want to scale this, we want people to say, hey, I want to do this in my town. One, it's already happening. We have a 060 happening out in Philadelphia. We have some others that are trying to scale this idea. The reason they're able to do that is because it's for profit. It's faster motive. If someone wants to do it non-for-profit, be our guest. Be our brave pilot. We don't know how to do it.
That's great. In the few minutes we have left, I want to get more. So on the practical end, talking to young leaders, I think your story is phenomenal. You talked a lot about greed, and you were living the life that most young professionals are pursuing, right? They want the corner office. They want to go to all the fancy places. They want to have the bank account. And you lived that. And now you're living a totally different life. And you would say your early, however old you were, was all about you. So can you talk a little bit about greed, and just, what would you tell your 20-year-old ambitious self, not knowing what you know now, that you wish you would have known then?
You probably don't know you're greedy.
It's good.
You probably don't know how big your ambition is. You might sense it a little bit, but you suppress that because you're a good person. That's what you tell yourself. I don't want to chastise, but what I will say is it is a silent disruptor. You will find yourself making excuses of why you had to stay out late, why your family needs to sacrifice now for this future that you're going to create. If you're always pursuing this thing, this big hit that you're going to get tomorrow, meaning you're not present in today, that ambition is probably based off of a little bit of greed and pride. And look, there are people that survive their entire careers right there in that place. They don't cross the boundary and steal or get caught. They don't break the rules. But in general, happiness is not in the pursuit of tomorrow. I don't want to tell people what's going to make them happy, but I'll tell you, being present, being content. Don't confuse that with complacent. Complacency is different. Even I hate complacency. I want to strive. I want to be better. I want to be better in all things. But being content, knowing that today is special. You're missing out. You're missing out on what you think you're trying to get. That is what you're trying to get. But you have to see it with where you are. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, you are. So if it takes, you talked about humility. For you, it took a circumstance. Do you feel that everyone has to have their quote-unquote rock bottom experience to actually get the humility to see clearly? Or, do you have any advice for how you can do that without having to necessarily pay for what you did?
I'm just blessed. Yeah. I'm blessed that I was able to survive a rock bottom.
Yeah.
But I'm also blessed because I've been able to meet those who certainly are much wiser and interfocused and reflective, that they don't need that. They can learn from even my experiences, which is why I share it so deeply. You don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't. You can change now. But here's a good friend of mine told me this, and I believe it to be absolutely true. If you really want to change, if you really want something significant to happen differently in your life, you have to do something significant and different. You have to make, just like I think it's the first law of physics. For every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction. Okay, if you want this reaction, this change to happen, you got to have an equal intense action point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, look, that might mean change over the job. That might mean get out of that house that you cannot afford. Drop to one car. If you really want, people sit there and they're like, man, why are my finances so tight and all this other stuff, and they still go out to dinner all the time. Like, you have to change it, and it has to be dramatic, and it has to be now, and you have to commit. Or wait till bottom hits. Bottom hits financially for a majority of Americans. And they learn now, then, and finally how to handle the credit after they've hit, and they restore. At one point, there was a statistic during the recession that 1/3 of homes was at least one payment behind. 33% of every home, one payment behind. That's default coming. So I know I'm talking to a mass audience. So don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't wait for that future, that thing to come to make it all better. It might for some. Change it. Change it now. Be dramatic. And guess what? You're going to get change in return.
Yeah.
Don't know what it's going to be. You might make the wrong move too, but you will get change. Things will then be different.
So I wanted to spend a lot of time on entrepreneurship and things, but maybe we can do another podcast. So I'll just leave the last question very open-ended. Do you have any advice for young leaders, 20 to 40? What would it be? It could be around entrepreneurship, going after your dreams, being humble. What would you tell them?
Going after it. I mean, so I just spoke about this on 2 hours on entrepreneurship for PA Cyber yesterday.
Oh, cool.
And I guess we could have summarized that 2 hours to probably 20 seconds. Don't take too many risks. Okay. Everyone thinks they got to quit that job that's actually putting food on the table to follow that dream. Like they just got to commit. They got to take that risk. I thought that. I did. I thought it 100%. I'll tell you it was wrong. You need to pursue that dream, continue that plan and developing it, continue developing that network that's going to support it, developing that client base that's going to pay for it. Do all of that, but do not put yourself in the risk and lack of security that you have in that day job or whatnot. Wait until it's literally a breaking point. Like you absolutely cannot do both. Not what you want to do, what you cannot possibly do. And then it's time to make a decision. I think entrepreneurs, because they see only these beautiful stories in Entrepreneur Magazine and Fast Company, and they're so addictive of these guys just went for it. All of them just didn't really go for it. What did they go? They went to that venture capital fund that funded the whole freaking thing, Yeah. I mean, so it wasn't that much of a risk. They were pulling a full salary and maybe have to go get another job. Most didn't put it all on the line. And with some successful entrepreneurs I've met who did put it all on the line and become successful, they'll tell you it didn't have to be that way. They wish they did it different. They caused themselves a lot more unneeded anxiety. But that's that. My advice is to not put yourself at risk, because when you put yourself at that risk of what entrepreneurship really is, you run the risk of really putting a lot of other things at jeopardy. I might just be hyper-focused on that because of my experiences and so on. And, there are other very sophisticated individuals who will talk to you about, well, there's a methodical process that you need to go through in your business. Blah. It's different for all. People find their way. Entrepreneurs are just, that's what it is. Your creative spirit's just going to go out there and you're going to make it happen your way.
Yeah.
You're only going to listen to the advice you want to hear. It's kind of in the ball game. Just let me be that warning, that little cricket saying, don't risk it too soon. Keep structuring and make it real. Don't be delusional. Entrepreneurs trick themselves all the time of how great their idea is. Your idea is not that great. Ideas are easy. Executing is what real entrepreneurship is. Executing. So, I feel like I've been lecturing, and I'm not.
I love it.
I'm not a genius. Yeah,
that's why I do these. I just sit there and take notes and just soak it all in. Yeah, well, and then we put it out there for others. So, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll get to do this again sometime.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to absolutely coming back if you want me.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to that interview with Daniel. I hope that it really challenged and inspired you and enjoyed it. And you can find ways to connect with Daniel and 068 in the show notes at l3leadership.org/episode 122. And you'll find everything that you need there. Again, if you say, hey, I really want to connect with what Daniel's doing, I'd love to give back. One way you can support them is helping them raise $10,000 through a Kiva loan. And I'll include a link in the show notes where you can click and give to them. And just remember that every dollar counts. No gift is insignificant. It can be $5 or it could be $5,000. Every dollar really does make a difference. But it's a great way to support Daniel and what they do. They're big supporters of L3. They're one of our sponsors, and we just appreciate them so much. Lastly, if you want to stay in touch with what we're doing with L3 Leadership, when you go on our website at l3leadership.org, you can sign up for our email list, and you'll get emails with everything coming up event-wise and the interviews and everything else that we do. And you'll also get a free copy of my ebook, Making the Most of Mentoring, which is my step-by-step process for getting meetings with mentors. And I just want to thank our other sponsors, Bab Inc. They host our monthly leadership breakfast, and my friend Russell Livingston leads their company and has a huge heart for investing in next generation leaders. And they are an insurance broker, third-party administrator, and consulting firm, and they're just doing some really cool things here in Pittsburgh. We really love partnering with them, and you can check them out at babbins.com. That's BABBINS.com. And again, if you really enjoy the podcast, really would appreciate if you would subscribe on iTunes and leave a rating and review, or whatever you listen to a podcast through. It really does make a difference. I'll close with a quote. Tim Keller said this. I thought it was fitting, given Daniel's talk. Tim Keller said, "The only character flaws that can really destroy us are the ones that we don't admit." And man, I hope that challenges you. The only character flaws that can really destroy us are the ones we don't admit. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Laura and I appreciate you so much, and we'll talk to you next episode.